want to be comfortable. And all the rooms you can fill out some post-its so you can get some feedback. Thank you for coming on this beautiful night. I know it's not indoors when it's really nice outside, but this is really important to us. So I thank you for taking some time out of your evening to inform us and to help us guide where Nisswa and Brainerd Public Schools goes. I'm going to go ahead and hand over the mic to our superintendent, Lady Marson, and so please welcome her.
Pleasure to be here tonight on this beautiful spring night. The last couple nights when we've been having these, it still felt a little bit like winter on Monday and maybe fall on Tuesday, so we have spring. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. I hope you find this to be just a super fun evening. I want to tell you just a little bit about what the protocol for tonight is going to be. We're going to start, Steve Lund. Oh, he's hiding back there. Steve Lund and I are going to start by giving you just a brief overview of where we've been in this process the last 2 years and what the plan is as we're moving forward. And so he'll talk about the last 2 years and I'll transition and move to kind of what we're thinking as far as the plan. And then it is with great excitement tonight that I can introduce a number of people who have come to help us with the listening session. And I first want to start by welcoming Tom Hagelin, one of our board members, for being here to hear the input that all of you have to say about Nisswa and about this incredible school district as a whole. And then I also want to welcome many people that are here with Foster Jacobson Johnson and Woodset Smith and Knowlton for being here. We have Dave Bergeron, and we have Glenn Chido, and he's going to run the listening session in a little bit. In the back, we have Todd Rapp, who's here. He helps us with our communications piece through Foster Jacobson Johnson. And then we have Captain Danae with Woodset Smith and Knowlton. So we're really thrilled tonight to have all of them here to help us through this process as well. So I know that you don't want to hear me talk anymore other than to give you information on where we've been and where we plan to go. And so we thank you very, very much for being here tonight. It's just a privilege for us to be here with you. So I'll turn it over to Steve.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right.
Now, can we do it without mics? Is that okay?
I have teenage kids, so I typically don't have a problem with volume. So if you can't hear me, just let me know, okay? So let's start out with why we're here tonight. And while we're going to talk about facilities, and that's kind of the forefront of the issue, the core of what we do clearly is about kids, okay? So as we go through, we're going to look at some challenges that we have in our facilities. But as we do that, let's try to also imagine the opportunities that are in front of us too. So tonight is about sharing information. So we're going to share with you a lot of the work that we've been doing. We've been at this for a while. We've gathered a lot of information that's important relative to our facility planning. But more importantly, tonight is about getting feedback from you about not only Brainerd School District, but this facility, this school here right in Nisswa. So we want to gather as much feedback from you as possible tonight, so don't be shy as we get into that part. So let's talk a little bit about where we've been. We've done a lot of information gathering, like I said, over the course of nearly 2 years we've been at this. And we've gathered a lot of information about our demographics and what that means for our enrollment in the future, okay? And while we always project enrollment from the school district perspective, that's how we best calculate how much revenue we're going to receive so that we can educate our students. We took a little deeper look into it from not only a student perspective, but also folded in some community information. Things such as housing starts and other such things that we maybe don't look at every year when we try to project enrollment. But as we look a little bit further out, we actually engaged with a professional that was the former state demographer from Minnesota that helped us with some of that work. It's kind of interesting to take a look at it. We then took that enrollment projection and applied it to how much room we have in our schools right now, and then how much maybe perhaps we should be planning for the future as we look out about 10 years with our enrollment. The last piece of information that we'll share with you tonight revolves around the current condition of our buildings. So we took an entire summer with engineers and our staff, our building engineer staff too, and they scoured our buildings from basement to roofs and took a look at everything that we should be paying attention to within the foreseeable future with future maintenance needs or reliability that needs out there with keeping these buildings up. So let's first start talking about enrollment. So not unlike the state, if you look at the state trends and even rural Minnesota school districts, we're coming out of a period where we kind of hit a trough in our enrollment when we were in the economic downturn. And we are in a really good place right now relative to our enrollment. We've hit that down point, we're starting to pull back out of it. There again, a lot of school districts across the state do the same thing as we travel through that economic downturn. But we're positioned right now where we not only have stability in our enrollment, but over the last few years we've had some slight growth. And when we start to apply that growth to the future, you can see that in the next 10 years, we forecast continued growth. And if you were to look at the very same trend for students across the entire state of Minnesota, you're going to see something very similar. So it's not uncommon to have that type of growth in our future. But if also, if you take a look at it, the state demographer came up with 3 different scenarios for growth, kind of a low, a middle, and a high point. But if you take a look at it, it's not insurmountable. If you look at the low growth, as we travel from when the studies began in 2015, our enrollment was about 6,436 students. In the next 10 years, she said that we would have the possibility on the low side to travel up to about 6,700 students. Okay? Well, over the course of that 10 years, that's less than 0.5%. Kind of manageable. If you hit the medium, it's still less than 1%. It's about 0.7% each year for the next 10 years. And if we hit that high level, it's about 1% or 10% total over that 10 years. So definitely manageable growth for us, but growth nonetheless. So when you apply that estimated growth, projected growth in student enrollment to the current capacity or the room we have in our buildings, you can start to formulate some things that we better be paying attention to, okay? If you start out with the elementary schools, you can see that our current enrollment right now for this school year is about 2,450 kids. That average growth, the middle line in that former graph that showed about 6,900 total over the next 10 years, says our elementary schools could grow up to perhaps about a little over 2,600. Right now, in terms of capacity in our buildings, we have room for about 2,150. And you're probably saying, well, Steve, what's going on here? We have 2,450 kids, and you're saying we have room for 2,150. How is that working? Well, if you look, if you come into our buildings during the day, you're going to see how that's working. We've got kids tucked nook and cranny all over the place trying to create classrooms and learning spaces in buildings, in the existing space that we have. You can feel that tightness in the buildings when you come here during the school day and see how they're being used. So we have a current space issue right now that we've identified at our elementary schools. At the middle level in the high school, it's a little bit different story. So Forest View Middle School was built about not quite 15 years ago, and when we did that, we did many things right when we built Forest View. It's kind of 4 separate schools within a school building, but we also built it big enough so it can accommodate what we're expecting for future growth. Same with the high school. While we have a lot of different educational and operational challenges that we face at the high school, from a capacity standpoint, we're positioned fairly well. So when you look at the elementary schools, that's where our issue exists from a capacity standpoint. Right now, we need space for about 300 kids. And as we travel through the next 10 years at that average growth, we're saying we should probably create space for an additional 470 over what we have available, right? 475 over what we have available right now. So when you look at that space, we talk about it. And when you look at Nisswa, for example, we're starting to create spaces within spaces to accommodate what will be next year. There's 12 classrooms in this school right now. Next year, we're actually positioning ourselves at one where we keep our class sizes down. We're going to add another classroom here within the existing space footprint that we have. It's going to be a challenge. You'll see more of this as we do that. So we've then taken spaces that maybe haven't traditionally been for individualized or classroom learning, and we've converted them, which means that those spaces we've had to move out to the hallways. We maybe had to take storage and put it down in the boilers in order to make sure that we've got space available for the learning that takes place in our schools. So when you look at the elementary space, we've recognized that we have a capacity issue that we need to attend to. So one of our first looks was to say, well, how do we compare to other districts like us? And when you do that comparison, we usually compare ourselves to districts that are in communities like ours. They're typically going to be those that we compete on the football field with, on the basketball court, our Central Lakes Conference districts. They're going to be communities that not only look like us, but districts that are about our size. And when you look at how they are stacked up with square, just on a broad measurement of square feet per student in their elementary schools, you can see that we are on the low side. You can see that tightness that we have at about 124 square feet per student. And it travels all the way up to about 175 in St. Cloud. The Department of Education says that you should probably have somewhere on the low end around about 125 to 155. And as you can see, it's not uncommon for many districts to be kind of in the middle of that range. But you can see that we're bookended between two districts that are also as tight as ours, being Bemidji and Morgan. And if you look, what are they doing in Bemidji right now? And of course, what are they doing in Morgan? So these are some of the very same things that other districts are looking at when they're looking at some of their space issues. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the condition part. So our school district, we are the 5th largest by student population, the 5th largest school district outside the 7th County metro area. We're 516 square miles, we have 12 facilities, 1.2 million square feet of schools on about a half section of property. When you look at the average age of our 12 buildings, you can see that we have about a third of them that are starting to tick closer to that century mark. Okay? But what's interesting to note is you travel from our oldest building in 1929, constructed in 1929, to our newest, the Forest View, constructed in about 2004, you can see that our district over this time has taken kind of a strategy of constructing buildings about every 10 to 15 years, trying to be on a kind of a replacement cycle of 10 to 15 years, with the exception of when the new high school was built in 1968, the community kind of decided to take about a 35-year pause before it constructed Forest View. We can't be taking 35-year pauses on a replacement cycle, because if we were to do that with 12 facilities, by the time you got back to replacing the first facility you did, it would be about 400 years old. So even if you were to take about a 10-year replacement cycle on 12 facilities, by the time you got back to the first one, it's going to be 120 years old. So we got to kind of be watching about how we're managing that replacement cycle with our buildings. What that equals is an average age of our facilities of about 44 years. And there again, well, how do we compare? So we compare ourselves to the same districts as far as comparable districts within our conference, districts such as Wilmer and Grand Rapids and Moorhead and Sauk Rapids, Bemidji. But then you can see where we sit there by comparison, but then we also compare ourselves to those districts that we compete with. And you can see where they sit by comparison relative to the average age of their buildings. The interesting thing to note is we're at the highest, but there's one very close to us, obviously Wilmer. And what are they doing in Wilmer right now? There again, these are things that districts, we're not uncommon for going through a process and making sure that we're paying close attention to how we're managing our facilities. Many districts across the state are doing the very same thing. So when we looked at trying to assess what we have, we looked at the current condition, and we tried to really identify all of those things that we better be paying attention to that are going to need maintenance in the future. Okay, and when we identify those things, we identify things that are reaching their end of their useful life or trying to forecast when they will reach the end of their useful life. We also look at things that we haven't been able to fund yet, deficiencies that we haven't been able to fund yet, such as accessibility, secured entrances is a big thing. It's going to be things such as tuck pointing, roofs, boilers, HVAC systems. We have a sea of parking lots that we have to maintain, over 1 million square feet of parking lots. And of course, things such as windows. Those are all the things that we gathered up and tried to put a rough order of magnitude estimate on what we should be planning for from a financial capacity standpoint. And we totaled up about $90 million of future maintenance that lies out there on these 12 facilities. And this is how it sits with each one of these facilities. Not surprising, the Forest View building, being the newest, only has about $1 million, so you know if there's what we better be paying attention to. And you can travel to the oldest building with Washington, built in 1929, having $20 million. But one important thing that we need to do when you get to this point is to apply this building size to it. And why that's important is while $20 million at Washington building is a big amount, it's a pretty big building. It's 140,000 square feet. So when you do that calculation, you can see that while Washington is at the top of the total, it sits kind of in the middle on a per square foot basis. Well, why is this important? Because when you start to look at making investments into some of these buildings on a per square foot basis, you start to compare that to, well, how much does it cost to replace that building on a square foot basis cost? So you can see, well, Lincoln and Harrison had about $9–10 million worth of future maintenance. And they're small buildings. They're about 30,000 square feet. So they sit up there on a per square foot basis quite high. So certainly things that when you start to do some of that strategic planning, it's one of the things you should be paying attention to. Not the only thing, but certainly one of those things. So as we started to do some of that strategic thinking about how to address that $90 million, how to future maintenance, how to address our capacity issues that we face, we started to think about and develop some solutions. And we started to discover and imagine some opportunities. And we began to formulate some different things in strategy-wise relative to that would touch each one of the facilities, this being one of them, of course. And we found that the strategies really took on one of the 5 R's, whether it was right sizing. We know we have to right size our elementary buildings. Perhaps renewing some buildings, reinvestment, repurpose. And when I say recreate some of our buildings and the cultures that exist within them, and perhaps new facilities. So where are we going from here?
Isn't that interesting information? I know, this is the 3rd time this week we've gone through it, and every time I go through it, it's like, I just think it's such useful information to have.
Yeah, how does the facilities plan mesh with the technology plan? I'm assuming there's a technology plan for the district.
Well, technology, as I'll talk about in just a little bit, is one of our goals as we're moving forward with the building project. We have 8 objectives that we're going to address, and technology is part of that. So why don't I talk about that as part of that? Okay, so where are we going next? When I came in July, one of the discussions the board had with me is we have this incredible plan, this comprehensive facilities plan, or this umbrella plan for all 12 buildings. And we know that there's this huge price tag that's associated with it. But how do we prioritize and determine what it is that we need to do and what the priorities of the school district are within the district and within our communities? And so in October, we approved that plan, and then in November at the board meeting, I brought forth a plan to the Board of Education that I thought would be steps for us to move forward as we get that information. And so one of the things that we talked about is that the overall goal, first of all, our biggest goal of all is to have the highest academic achievement for our children possible, to provide the opportunities for our kids so that they can be successful. And in this particular plan, we're doing it through the facilities project, looking at facilities that will promote the innovation, the opportunity, and the success for each and every one of our learners. And we're looking at doing it through 8 specific pieces. The first objective on here is to look at the safety and security needs of each of our buildings. It's really interesting when you go through the 12 buildings how there are different security levels in each of the buildings, but to have uniform security to meet the needs that we have for each of those facilities. The second one, Steve talked a lot about, the mechanical and the educational adequacy needs that we have in the buildings. The roofs, the tuck pointing, windows, all those kinds of things that aren't really fun to spend a lot of money on, but they're very important to make sure that you have the proper HVAC system and the proper heating and cooling systems in your buildings. The third one that we really want to talk about is spaces that foster best practice instruction and 21st century learning opportunities. We're 17 years into the 21st century already, and if we think back just 17 years ago when the year 2000 came, think of all of the technology that has occurred in that time. Think of how instruction and best practice teaching and learning has changed during that period of time. What's that going to look like for our learners as they move forward? The third or fourth objective, is spaces that promote robust opportunities in all of the 4 A's. Through the Ed Foundation, we talk a lot about the importance of high-quality academics, athletics, arts, and activities, providing a well-rounded, diverse set of offerings for our learners so that everyone can find their purpose and to find that success in their school. The next one is one that's really, that I hear a lot when we talk to chamber members and we talk to many of the business owners throughout our community, and that is providing a community collaboration, ownership, and providing the workforce development that we need to enhance our workforce right within our region. Providing the work-ready skills at the high school and the middle school level that they need to get jobs when they come out of school. To provide what they need to go to our 2-year college and to partner with CLC to provide the skills that our kids need for certain jobs. And then also to enhance opportunities so our learners that choose to go on to further education, the 4-year colleges and so on, that they have those opportunities. But we really want to make sure that we're collaborating with our businesses to ensure that this is happening. The next one is one that was just brought up, providing the innovative and visionary technology integration that we need in our school districts. You know, I think back to when I was going to school and there wasn't even a computer that I was using at that time. And now, because of our global society, our kids are being competitive with everyone throughout the world because of the internet and all of the technology integration that has occurred throughout our world. And we need to make sure that our kids have the skills that they need so that they can be successful amongst and with all of the other children throughout the world. The next bullet that we have for our objectives is to provide transparency, engagement, and trust building with our community. We had a lot of discussion in Harrison on Tuesday night about this. And that's part of the reason that we're doing the listening sessions that we're doing, such as tonight. It's part of why we've produced this 6-phase process that I'm going to talk about, because we know that you are the experts, that you know the community the best and what the needs of our region and what our communities are. We also know that our teachers and the people, our administrators, the people that are working in our buildings know what the strengths are of the facilities that they're working in right now and what they're going to need to help our kids be successful and how we can hear from one another and partner. I talk about this a lot when I speak, but you know, I always share the fact that if we think we're going to go about anything alone, we're not going to get very far. But when we partner together as communities and school districts and communities and our businesses and everybody working together with that same vision in mind, it's amazing what we can do together to provide the highest quality education for our kids. And the last one is just a very important one, is to make sure that we're providing the highest quality educational opportunities for our taxpayers' generous investment. We know that every time that our community goes to the voting booth to vote on a school bond referendum, that this is a generous gift that our community gives us. And we need to keep that in mind and to make sure that what you will be getting for the generous gift that you give the district is the highest quality product, and it is what we need for our students to be successful in the future. So with these things in mind, we're going through this 6-phase process that I talked about. I'll go through these real quickly and then I'll take each of them individually. The first one is to have a comprehensive communications plan. And that starts from day one, forever, really. A great, extensive communications plan is something that we need to do to make sure that we're sharing the information that everyone needs to have their questions answered. The second one, stakeholder engagement with the internal and external listening sessions, which we're doing tonight, that we'll talk about. The third one, some potential surveys and assessments that the board can kind of decide what surveys and assessments they need in the future to get the information from the public so that we can put it together to provide the best plan as we go into phase 4. Developing what the project will look like. What are the options? What is the scope that we believe is best for all of our learners within our district? Phase 5 is the bond referendum election itself, that process to getting to that point. And if successful, then we would move into phase 6, the comprehensive construction management program. And that's where the real work really begins. And so I'm going to take you through each of these 6 phases and just hit some of the highlights tonight. And at any point, I want you to feel free to ask questions about any of them if you have questions. The first one I talked a little bit about is the communications planning. In our communications planning, we have 2 objectives right at the forefront to provide the highest education. To communicate a vision for educational achievement for our students, and to provide residents with the information that they need to evaluate the bond referendum proposal. I think you're seeing a lot, whether it's in the newspaper, if it's on the websites or whatever, you're probably starting to see something called Blueprint 181, Investing, Growing, and Leading. Well, what does that mean? Well, one of the things that we've talked about extensively is how important it is that we communicate in every realm that we can think of, actually. In some of the traditional ways that we will continue to communicate in, through the newspaper, the radio, through pamphlets, through advertising, those types of ways. All of that communication is very important. But we also know that in this day of technology that we need to do what we can to promote our communications planning through the internet. And so the communications team that's been working on this developed a new website for the school district that's called Blueprint 181. We thought it was appropriate with the B for Brainerd, with the blue, with blueprint meaning facilities, and clearly the District 181. And we thought that the 3 words that were particularly important is that we really are investing in our children. We see that our community and our school district is growing, and by golly, we are going to continue to lead this state to provide the highest quality education of any district in this state. And we intend to continue to be the leaders so that our kids have the success.
Do you have a copy of the communication plan somewhere on your website?
It's on the website. If you go to blueprint181.org, the communications plan would be on there.
Resources page? I don't see it.
Is it the communications planning, all the steps?
Under resources.
I see there's 2 PowerPoints and press releases.
Are you asking for the Cunningham report?
No, I'm asking for your communications plan.
Communications plan. What we do every Friday when we meet.
With parents.
Oh, that's not on the website. I can dig that out tomorrow.
Okay, let's make a note of that for our meeting tomorrow, because I think that's important to have it, kind of what our process is. We've been developing a number of pamphlets. We're working on a draft placemat that we're going to be distributing that people can take that has a lot of this information on it, and so on when we come back. And so let's make sure that we get that on there, and we can talk about that tomorrow. Any other questions about the communications plan or any ideas that you have? Okay, the second phase is the stakeholder engagement. You probably have heard a lot in the paper that we've been talking a lot with the staff within our schools. Prior to May, I believe we had 44 sessions with our teachers, our administrators, all of the employees in our school district to talk about what are the strengths of the areas in which they work, what are the needs that we're going to have as we move forward through the next 10 years, next 20 years, and so on. And we've been really having some wonderful dialogue with our employees to talk about the facility in which they work. While we've been doing these public listening sessions, during the afternoons, the members from FJJ, especially Glenn and Eric, have been coming back and bringing the results back to the staff so that they can hear what it is that they thought were the top priorities, the top needs, and some of the top strengths that they have in the buildings. On top of those, and we'll be coming back to our internal listening sessions several times, But we also have been wanting to hear from each and every one of you. So we've been coming to each of the schools, or 9 of the 12 schools, to have a session like we are tonight, where you can get this information. And then we're going to have a listening session to hear from you what you believe the strengths are of Nisswa Elementary in the school district. What are some of the challenges that you believe as we move forward? What would be your vision and your advice that you would give to the school board members as they will be making a decision in the future? And you're going to be able to have some of that input yet today. We're also going, talking to many parent groups, civic groups, businesses. We're doing some meetings with the Chamber of Commerce's, school-centered neighborhoods like this one, the school board. We have every month at our school board meetings, we're having updates of what we're doing. Community members, and we're trying to get to just as many people as we can, as many times as we can, to get input and to also come back and report back what we're learning as we do these listening sessions.
What other sessions are planned in this one, besides this one?
Right now, I'm not sure. We're still scheduling. That's one of them that they're working on, and Janet Horn is helping to schedule them. But certainly, the chamber, we want to meet with them to have people come. We're also meeting with some of the hospitality industries to get them together as a group to talk about how we can partner with our career and technical education departments, and what that partnership could be with our school and our businesses. We're also, I know I came to the Lions the other day, and so we're going to continue to come to as many civic organizations as we can. So if you have ideas for us, will you please give us those too, because we really truly are here to get ideas on how we can get the word out, and we can get.
I just would ask that they weren't all Brainerd backs, because I mean that's
No,
really
they're not.
Yeah,
No,
so as long as
one-
there's not just this and that's it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. Also, the phase 3 then, the board is going to have a number of opportunities to get additional information from the public besides the listening sessions. And some of the choices that they're going to have as we go forward to collect the information that they're looking for might include things such as a telephone survey. I know that's a real common one that a board will ask, where you can call 300 to 500 different homes, and there will be 30 questions or so relating specifically to the school and how the people feel about the school, what they believe are the necessary things that we need to do, what kind of a financial support do we feel that a community such as ours would be willing to support, and to just gain a whole bunch of information from those surveys. Some other ideas that they have, public polling. We can also look at our voting profile analysis that we can get from the county. We can do further review of our demographics, even though when Cunningham did the first part of this, I think they did a really nice job on giving us a great idea of what the demographics look like. But we can even get a little bit more specific to see where the enrollment data is going to grow, do some GIS mapping to see where the growth areas are within our school district, where we're going to have more children coming, where there might be less children attending, so that when we're looking at building facilities or adding on, repurposing, we can address the information that we've learned. All of these, though, will be additional opportunities if the board feels that it's information above and beyond that they need. So phases 1, 2, and 3 are really collecting data. Communication is collecting data. It's also giving back the information. It's answering the questions that the public has. The second phase is actually having communication, one-to-one communication with people, hearing about what we think priorities, needs are. And the third phase is a number of surveys and assessments to gain information. Once we get all of this information from phases 1, 2, and 3, then the board will have the opportunity to take all of this information and it'll be moved up to the board so that they can look at options and they can look at alternatives. At that point, our members from Foster Jacobson Johnson, Woodsett Smith Knowlton, Kraus Anderson, who are just doing an awesome job of supporting us through this process, they will collect this data, give it to us in summaries to help us make the decision that eventually will go to the public. We'll be looking at project costs and budgeting. We'll be quantifying and comparing operational costs and potential savings by doing some economical updates. We'll be looking at plans for existing facilities. They might be looking at potential site selections and property acquisition if necessary. They'll be looking at financial impact to our taxpayers. They'll also be identifying the project timeline and the impacts to project costs. And we'll be looking at some transition planning. At that point is when the board will decide what they believe we've got the information that we're ready to go to the voters for. And that brings us in with the project to phase 5, the bond election process itself. So at this point, the board will help us decide a potential date. We'll be doing the work with MDE to identify the review and comment and what our overall scope of our project will look like. We will have a lot of help to identify what our question or questions might be on a ballot. We'll be submitting our total plan to MDE, like I said, and we'll also be bringing all of this information to our voters throughout our school district. Now, these 5 phases are the 5 phases that we have contracted with Foster Jacobson Johnson, Woodsett Smith and Knowlton, and Kraus Anderson for thus far. It's to get us through a bond project. One of the questions people ask me every night when I'm talking is, Lane, when do you think this is going to happen? When do you foresee that we'll be coming to the public? The answer is we don't know. But I do believe that it's safe to say that in less than a year we will be coming to the public and asking for some kind of a bond referendum. Another question that I get asked really frequently is, do you already have in mind what the project looks like? The answer is absolutely not. That's why we're here tonight. Because we've got a good idea of what the umbrella of the project needs are, but now we need to identify and prioritize what are the must-do items, the should-do items, and what the community feels that they can support to help the district. And so once we get that all decided, then we can move to that election process. And when we get there, if we are fortunate enough to have a successful bond referendum pass, then we will be going into the contract construction management part of this. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of where we've been, why we are where we are today, and where we hope to go in the course of the next year and hopefully the next 5 years or so. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
What's plan B? I don't want to be the pessimist in the room, but I will. If we go through this whole process, we take it to the vote, it fails, that still doesn't help my 4th grader being too small of a class or not have enough technologies or whatever has happened. So is there, and obviously we're already past capacity at elementary school, so is there this is what we're going to do if not plan?
Well, that's a great question, and we got asked that on Tuesday night as well. And I think that it's safe to say, first of all, that somebody said it on Tuesday night, that we really need to make sure that we have the right plan in place in hopes that we can pass a referendum that's in front of the voters. And so we really need to collect all of the information that we can possibly get so that we do come forward with the right plan. If the right plan doesn't, what we believe is the right plan the first time doesn't pass, then we need to analyze the data. Did we lose it? First of all, and we might have more than one question. We may decide that there's 2 or 3 levels of questions that on a ballot in hopes to make it pass. If we don't pass our question on, then we really need to take a clear analysis of what the results were. Did it lose significantly? Is it because of something in particular that we didn't have in the project, or something that the public wasn't happy with, then I think we need to go back and listen to the public some more and draft it again in hopes that we can pass it. But I would bet that we'll continue our process. It'll just, the project itself will look somewhat different. But in the time being, we'll be kind of where we're at.
Right. I mean, I guess to Steve's point that we should have never been in this. I mean, so at some point, we didn't, the school board and the student body, the parents, the communities weren't proactive. So, I mean, we shouldn't be in this position right now, being kind of behind the eight ball, having this infrastructure and the class sizes that we have. And I feel like, as a parent, sure, everyone in this room is like, well, of course we want to do this, and you tax me whatever you want, it's our kids, of course. I can tell you my neighborhood, no one is going to want even half of 1% more on their taxes. And so it's very, and for every, I mean, I've lived in this community for 20-some years, and every time there's something about the school district on it, I just cringe, because it's like, God, it's like, everyone, and this one's special, everyone loves the schools like that, but if it means taxing them, it's a really hard sell. And that's why I was asking about the communication plan. This is a really, this isn't just, we rely on the newspaper and they're going to get the word out and everyone's going to be on our side because it's about our kids. It is not that way. And if we don't have a backup plan, or we don't have this incredibly detailed or grassroots or whatever you want to call it, system to get to all of the retirees and get to all the people that don't have a fourth grader and a second grader in an elementary school, this is never going to happen. And I hate to be a pessimist, but that's reality. And I have kids that are going to be in the school district for the next 10 years. And I don't want them to have to live through this. I mean, that's crazy. You know, just because someone 15 years ago sat on money or decided, well, we don't have to expand, we'll wait till that point, and now here we are. I mean, I just feel like there's this catch-22 we're in, and at the same time, I'm just so concerned. There's a dozen people here. You know, if this was tomorrow night, this Grandparents' Day, it'll be a fire hazard in this room.
That's right.
And it's going to be probably 60 parents, all the grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. That's who you need to talk to, not the 12 of us. And they don't care if there's foam on the walls and if the kitchen table or the lunch tables are round or square. It's like that. They don't care about that. But do they understand the criticalness of this and how that's going to impact your second grader for the next 10 years? And so that's why I feel like the communication plan is so important. I mean, you can be skywriting and, you know, dropping flyers from Zorbas or whatever, but they have to know how critical this is, or this isn't going to happen. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of people, I mean, I said, do we homeschool? Do we go to Pequot? Do we do everything online? And I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. And so even though it's really great to have this prioritization, and I want to participate as much as possible to help make the plan as good as it can be, I'm so terrified of not, and we're all on the same page, but every son outside of this building is not. And so in this community, if we don't have the Lions, if we don't have the Chamber, if we don't have the Main Street, I mean, I can make a list in the Nisswa area community. If you don't have the Lion, it's not going to happen. And I'm sure it's different at Garfield, and it's different at Baxter, and it's different for the high school, and all these different communities. And that's a huge, I mean, that's like a $200,000 ad agency plan of communication. And I'm guessing we have a piece of paper that has, we're going to send out a press release. We put up a website that has, I just counted 4 pages on it. We're going to have listed, you know, I mean, it's going to be a very basic thing. It's like, that's not going to cut it.
Right.
I mean, this is beyond phone calling and door knocking. This is only way this is going to pass is if everyone feels like this is going to be completely impacting me, and if I don't act, if I don't agree with this, it's going to completely change our neighborhood. Otherwise, it's going to be, yeah, it's their problem. It's their lake, it's their, you know, it doesn't impact me. And so that's why the plan B is, because I'm like,
But that's why
I want to be with you, but at the same time, you know, my kids are on the line, they're on the line here. If that plan doesn't pass, that's it.
And you're absolutely right. We have to have the right plan. We really do, but we also know that we can't do it alone. And so this really does have to be a community partnership focused on education. We need to get everyone engaged. And, you know, I hate to ask more of each of you, but we need you guys involved. We need that voice out there, because we we will certainly be there, and we'll be leading this charge, but we need everybody working together to really sell this, because we know that there's going to be opposition. We know that, and I think we're pretty clear where our oppositions probably are going to be, but we have to have good strategies for addressing those parts.
Right, I mean, I feel like 90% of that is the communication plan.
Absolutely.
That's the question, because I feel like if there's not that outreach, it's just not gonna happen.
And that's why that's number one, because we know that that communication plan is the critical piece, and it had to start on day one, and it has to go all the way forever. It's got to continue. We've got to have that community partnership. And actually, that's why we've got Todd on board with us too. He's really good at helping us with that. So,
And Lynn, maybe you want to remind folks that there's really two different sets of actors in this. There's a role that the school district plays, but there's a role that community people who
Right.
form what's called a vote yes committee.
a vote yes committee,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's what, when you're talking, of course, I give money to schools, I'm always a yes, but I'm sitting here thinking what we can do to get the community on board.
Yeah.
It's PTO and
We're going to have a really strong vote yes committee, but I do have to say the school cannot sponsor the vote yes committee. The vote yes committee has to come from the public and be led by the public. We can get you all of the information that you ever want as far as the information that you need. But you're absolutely right. There's two parts of this. We'll be out there selling it, and then we need a really strong and engaged vote yes. So I hope you'll all be part of that. So, yeah.
So would you guys, I'm just thinking of like my church or whatever, would you come into there and speak to them, like we have different forums and stuff? Is that something you guys would do, or is that like a vote yes thing?
Either one.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because
We can do
all
that.
the retired people.
Yeah. I speak in churches, I don't know, once a month, 2 times a month, something like that. I'll go to and speak to different groups in church. In fact, I was just at the League of Women Voters the other night, or early afternoon. Yeah. So absolutely. So just because of separation of church and state doesn't mean that we can't speak to those groups or anything. So absolutely,
I'm just thinking of how we get a lot of retired people
Yeah.
that are having coffee. I don't know.
it's a great idea. Yeah.
Bring a donut. You're good.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Glenn. And Glenn will tell you a story about me, I'm sure he does, every time he gets up in front of a group. But now we get to hear from you, and so this is the part that I'm super excited about tonight, to hear about what you believe the strengths are. So thank you very much for being here. Glenn?
Thank you. I'm going to apologize up front if, in fact, I refer to Superintendent Larson as Lane. I actually have known her since in the 80s, I believe it was. And just to be consistent, if anybody needs any dirt on her, I know a lot. So I've told every group I've spoken to. So by all means, I'll give you my card or whatever you can get a hold of me.
And what is my response then?
Well, I'll no, actually, Lynn and I have known each other that long. She, back in the days, we both talked. And I'm Glenn Chido, and my current position is retired, but I was a superintendent in Park Rapids for 10 years. And prior to that, I was a superintendent down in southern Minnesota, Renville County West, which is just south of Wilmer, the Renville, that area. You can see some heads shaking. But before that even, I was up in Thief River Falls. This is long before Lane was there, but I spent most of my career up there as a teacher and coach. Kids graduated from there. I was assistant soup and so on and so forth. But I came with and to FJJ about 5 years ago. We were involved in a large project, maybe not quite as large as this, but potentially a large project. Got involved in this process. I really enjoyed it, and contacted or talked to my son. This is Dave Bergeron. I'll let him introduce himself here in a minute. Not really. He's not my son. Trust me. I'm trying to get him on my sax roll too. But anyway, I'm gonna let him introduce himself first, and then or next, and then I'm gonna get into a little bit of what we are gonna do tonight, and hopefully, yes, you'll be engaged in this process and help us out a little bit. So, I'll let Dave go ahead and introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. Dave Bergeron, one of the principal owners of Foster J.
grew up in northern Minnesota, have a degree in business from UND, and for the better part of the last 25 years, have worked almost exclusively with school districts, primarily in northern Minnesota, helping to address issues much like Brainerd, in the Brainerd area schools are doing. So, and I'm not Glenn's son, but I'm going to assist him today. So, and if he starts telling stories, it's okay to go like this.
Give it one of these, yes. It wouldn't be the first or last time I see that. What I'd ask you to do though is if you wouldn't mind putting your name on the front part of the card. And the reason I ask that is that so I don't, if I'm talking to you, I'm not saying hey you, I can actually refer to you by your name. So if you wouldn't mind just putting your first name on the card. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask some very open-ended questions. You did not have to study for this test, trust me. But if they're open-ended questions, what we're really trying to do is garner some information, and Lane has gone through a piece about how the engagement part, and Lane's absolutely correct. We've done many, many of these, and I'm going to make one reference to one group, the student group. We do this with students, and I actually talked about that a little bit today when I was here with the staff. Students, if any of you have either relatives or children that might be that old that are in the high school, we may have been involved with them. Students are great. They are absolutely great to do these listening sessions with. Number one, they have a no adult filter. And they will tell you what it is and how and what it's all about. And generally speaking though, and I've yet to run into a bad one, they're very respectful, but they're pretty spot on with their opinions and their thoughts. And so we've gone through this process with them along with everybody else. And I really do think it is, and Lane's already, already alluded to the fact that this is important to get feedback from folks. You all have Post-it notes in front of you. What I ask you to do then is when we ask you the question, write your response on a Post-it note. If you have multiple responses, then write multiple Post-it notes or responses on multiple Post-it notes, mainly because I am old and if you put too much on this, I get one of these and I can't read it very well and I've got back and forth. But I'll take it up and then I'll put it on the board. Well, we've kind of exhausted this question and we'll move on to the next one. The one other piece of this that's important is that if Greg was going to write something or did write something and Jackie was going to write the exact same thing, go ahead and do it. Because we also look for frequency of responses that we get from groups. And that goes into the data, and we'll go into this at the end of this when it all comes back to Lane and the school board. They're going to be able to see different things that rise to the top. And again, we've done all of this type of thing with your staff, your students up to this point in time, and obviously we're into the community piece. Lastly, and I'll get rolling here, lastly, one thing that FJJ is real good about is they hire retired educators. And the reason they hire us is that they can pay us by the Post-it note. And so I have a fairly long grocery list for my wife, so when I go home tonight, I'd really like to be able to say I made some money, so I can go ahead and pick up some groceries on the way home. So write as many Post-it notes as you want. And if you don't want to, there's no pressure on it. Honestly, folks, we hope that, you came here, Elaine, have you done that? You given all those lists like we're talking about? Yes, you know what I'm talking about then. Nonetheless, please write and participate. And again, if you don't want to and don't have a desire, that's okay too. Question?
We got lots of Post-it.
Yeah, trust me, I brought a whole bunch. Any questions of me? Okay, here's the first question that I would ask, and we've written up here, I would use it on PowerPoint, or with this small group, we can go ahead and do it I'll call it the old-fashioned way, it's called the manual way. But if you're looking at the district, or specifically of the Nisswa school, what's the great things that are happening right now? If I was coming into the area, and I've got 5 kids, 2 kids, doesn't matter, and I ran into you on the street and I wanted to know why would I send my kids to either Nisswa in this case, or put my kids in the Brainerd school system? What would you tell me? Go ahead and write it, put it all in front of you, I'll pick it up, put it on the board, and we'll move from there. Again, you'll be the first one. Thank you. You got academic achievement.
Awesome staff, people.
Great teachers, awesome staff.
Best principal in the district. Wow, you can't write that.
I have two of them.
Okay, all right. Awesome kids, family, staff, and community.
Involved in the community.
Community involvement. Great principal. Community involvement.
See, you guys must have friends in the crowd. Technology, amazing support. We've got teachers and community again.
It's got a positive vibe. It's a genuine caring for each student.
Okay, you guys, did she take you to this? Molly, come on.
Yeah.
Relatives, friends. Okay. All right, she's buying breakfast is what I just heard. Okay. Molly Raspy, great thing, excuse me. Focus on technology, academic quality.
Awesome parent support. Only in Nisswa happenings. Open to ideas, the staff, and the musical programs.
Community proud of the school. Anything else? All right, let's jump to the next one. Son? Tough to get good help nowadays. All right, here's the other part of this. I'll use, this is one of the few stories I will give you. I was in Grafton, North Dakota, working with a group of students. First question was great things, second question was this. So I said, we're going to turn the hourglass over. Not a kid in the room knew what I meant by an hourglass. I got all these big looks, and I said, okay folks, let's go to the negative side, or challenges. Every district has that. What's our challenges? What are we running into here? Either in this school and or even in the district. So this could be either or.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Oh wow, all right.
In space.
Smaller class size, more efficient use of space, better / more technology, more useful furnishings. Can't read that last word, guys. I apologize. Better traffic flow, parking, buses, parent pickup, more storage, more efficient transportation. Busing start at 6:45 question mark. Ouch. Space issues. We got capacity again. Space issues. Unsecure entrance. Teachers student ratio. Got traffic, out-of-date sound system. Well, here we go. Yep, so buy groceries tonight for sure. Crowded, small classes, security entrance, limited space, too small. What do you mean by too small? Whoever wrote it.
School is too small.
School is too, okay. Just want to make sure we get it.
Yes, I'm assuming that. Yeah.
Space, limited space. We got an old gymnasium. We got educating the elderly taxpayers. We got space again. Gym again. Technology. When we write technology as a challenge, what do we mean by that? Whoever's writing it. I mean, obviously we're moving forward, but what do we mean by that?
Lighting, sound.
Keeping up with it? Okay. Just want to make sure, because as we put stuff together, we don't want it to be our perception. We certainly want to make sure it's yours. Educating the elderly taxpayers. Out of rules. Not enough support, staff, EAs in parentheses. We got space again. We got parking. That's more. Not enough security. Water. Okay. Water being water station. You're writing it down. Okay. Parking lot drop-off congestion. Parking, water quality again. Anything else? Okay, let's look at the next one. Now this is more related to actual space. But what would you write down that what improvements could be made to improve the Nisswa school? It's a two-part question. We'll get to the second part, obviously, here in a minute. But what improvements could be made? Is that the last one? Both. Okay? Could be made to improve the Nisswa school. specifically to the school. We have a small gym, huh?
Small gym, that one just right in on there.
Small gym.
Small gym, she said it could be on both.
Addition to make room, space again. Add an addition to a building. Updates, well, gym. Another one of my many stories. I'm a little gun shy about picking up post-it notes and sit by the name tag. Minto, North Dakota, community group, just like this. Big half circle. I kept picking up a post-it note from this lady 3 times I did. It was her grocery list. That's no kidding. And she yelled at me every time. I said, could you move it back then? Because I was running around the room picking up these post-it notes. Adding square footage. More classrooms for 6. New gym. Larger gym. New entrance add-on. Space for all of curriculum. More classrooms.
This one says 4 new classrooms also, a new gym, secure entrance, and remodel the existing
You
building.
cheating now? I told you I was going to call you out today. Secure entrance. We got space for all curriculum. I read that one. More classrooms. More classrooms again. Don't have classrooms where one class has to walk through another. 2 plus 3rd grade. I was in that and I understand what that means. I walked in the room and I kept walking. I thought, is this where everybody has to go? And that was one of the more unusual rooms I've been in my life. Art room. Anything else?
Yeah, add a secure entrance and an addition to the new gym.
Okay, here's the second part of this question. Second part of the question, in essence, is almost the exact same thing, but now we're going to talk district-wide. What improvements could be made district-wide to help enhance the education in Brainerd schools? District-wide, we talked about this building specifically. What improvements could be made or should be made district-wide to help enhance the education in Brainerd schools? Any thoughts? Boy, now we got some hard thinking about it. Jackie's going to jump up there. No? Not yet. Okay, that's
Technology.
Technology. Okay. Now we're looking a little broader, district-wide.
Facility updates.
Continue updated technology. A little harder now.
Busing for all.
Ensuring security. Full-time nurse in every building. We've got full-time nurse again. We've got secure entrance, parking. More space, larger class size. Build a new elementary school. Update technology and buildings. We've got bus aids. Explore sharing of resources, tech buildings. Combine elementary buildings more efficient. Anticipate enrollment accuracy. New high school, not impressive to potential professionals moving here. That's underneath the new high school piece. Secure entrance. Steve alluded to it. Obviously, as Lane did as well. With the entrances now in the world we live in, unfortunately, you just got to be so much more careful. And I will say, I walked into this many months ago, 2 months ago, I did walk into this building. And I actually had people right away asking me who I was, which is a good thing. But I was able to walk anywhere I wanted to go. But at least people were saying, who are you? What are you doing? Yeah, who are you?
You know, this is one that has come out a lot in the last few meetings. This one says
Here's my last one. You can go ahead and write these on a post-it note. When we look at the decision makers, and I refer to that when I say decision makers, I look at school board members, superintendent, administration. They're going to get a lot of stuff. I mean, let's face it, at some point in time, they're going to get a deluge of just information and data and demographics and you name it. And then they've got to start figuring things out. And I can speak as a prior superintendent, every year they go through decision-making kinds of processes. And of course, everybody, doesn't matter whether it's Nisswa or it's Baxter or whatever, but everybody wants stuff. But now they got to prioritize and they got to figure this out. So if you were going to try to give them some advice as they move forward in this process, and obviously, lady right over here talked about communication before she left, which was obviously a that was good advice. But what advice would you give our decision makers as they move forward in this process? They're not close to the end yet, but it's going to sneak up on them fairly quick. And
Well, and I think she was really passionate about saying, you know, we've got to figure out what this is so that it can pass. So you people know the community way more than I do. What would you tell me that we need to know or to consider as we move forward?
so what advice would you give our decision makers? We certainly have
Yeah.
some of them in the room right tonight. What advice?
We would like that you don't tell them tonight, don't have these two clubs.
Yeah, please hold that. Don't put that on a post-it note. That one might get lost.
I taught in South Rapids, and Dr. Greg Bondell was our superintendent. I was there. Prior to that, I went through a strike and all this. When he came, he went out in the community and met, it was from Bryce to South Rapids, not quite to Foley. He met with community groups, the farm groups, personally. And that was, he won it for, and if he hadn't done that, I mean, we teachers went around and knocked on doors, but that was a turning point for our school district, and it's got up since then.
And I'm not just saying this, but I've known this lady for a long time. She's pretty good at that. Yeah. And I mean that very sincerely. If she was out the door, I'd say the exact same thing. I've known her for a long, long time. And she's very, very good at that. And what you just described is absolutely a critical piece in doing that.
Well,
You bet.
then you talk about the retirees, which we have been one of since we moved up here. And I think that, you know, there are groups of people. I wouldn't say generally all our friends, most of them have been in education or they're very pro-education, but we still need to share this with them. But small groups,
It has to make sense to, and I, there again, on the senior citizen part of it, no offense to any particular community, I think sometimes they get a bad rap with that. Because they've been through the game, they've had kids in school, it just got to make sense to them, and they'll get support. And Lane knows that again.
Can we write that down on
We need to capture
her?
that.
You want me to write?
Yeah, would you please, Gina, that'd be great, that was great advice.
I think this is good advice too. It's show the needs to people with no children in school. But people talk about that a lot. If they don't have children, like me for instance, I don't have children in school. How is this going to benefit our business community? How is it going to benefit our entire district? So I think that this is, Elaine, did you have a comment?
well, one other thing is, when I've been involved in passing so many letters that when you say to them, well, I don't have my kids in school, then you say to them, and how did you get through school? Who took care of you?
Exactly,
Yeah, so I know how to say that.
You guys don't know this, but Elaine was one of my professors as I went through admin school at St. Clovis.
Oh, so you got dirt on her as well, that's what it amounts to, right? We can share notes and we'll put them up on post-it.
She was. So
Let me read these off here that these folks wrote. Get businesses with info and get them on board to promote. Signage. We got to utilize social media to make sure young parents vote. Utilize people who feel strongly, PTO and Nisswa. Parents. Make good selling points for people without We've got look for ways to relate this plan to every underlined demographic, not just parents. Use metrics to show the community the impact of education. Anything else?
I think this one's good too. Keep the public aware of all decisions. And he said to remember that not everybody uses computers, so our traditional means are very, very important. And the social media is above and beyond. So we just need to do more of it. Yeah. And then what Jean had said about go to the small groups. So.
Meet with people at coffee shops, churches, places that they are already at. Encourage people to have a meeting in homes. Dollar, I think it's a dollar sign, to help spread the word. To help spread the word. Spend the money on practical needs, not a fancy building. Invite community members to come to school for a day to see the needs.
This one says identify various influential groups. And so sometimes even some of the non-traditional groups, you can give us ideas of who we might be missing.
Talk to and use local businesses when building. Anything else? Well, actually, folks, that all wraps it up.
Can we do my favorite question? We never get to do that.
Okay. Here's the
This is right.
here's the favorite question.
My favorite question.
And trust me, obviously as a male, I know to listen when female speaks. If you won the lottery,
No, that's not it.
The headline.
It's the medium.
here's the headline. If you were going to write, I thought it was his favorite question.
Yeah, that's his favorite.
His favorite. Anyway, here's Lane's favorite question. But if you were going to write the headlines 10 years from now, for the newspaper, we have a newspaper lady here, so if anybody does a really good job, let's see about getting you a job down the line. But nonetheless, if you were going to write the headlines for the newspaper 10 years from now, what would you want it to say about the Brainerd school system?
Dave will write
I'll
it,
just
so
write
you
it.
can just yell it.
What would you want it to say? Yeah, you don't have to do a post-it note. We'll let my son.
10 years.
What would you want it to say? Come on, Molly. Everybody bragged about you, so step up to the plate now.
Brainerd continues to be a blue ribbon school.
Thank you. There's a good one.
Brainerd, Cotton District and State.
Okay, you're going to have to go slow because I know how slow you are.
Brainerd, Blue Ribbon School.
I have Brainerd continues to be top in the state, top school in the state.
Brainerd gets international recognition. Nice.
Brainerd gets international recognition. I heard. Yeah. Anybody else?
Favorite choice of parents.
Brainerd school, favorite, I don't want it to be mine, but Brainerd school, favorite choice of parents? Got that one? Yep. Okay.
Brainerd provides quality learning experience for each and every child.
Yep. Brainerd provides quality education for each and every child. Anybody else? Go ahead. Say it.
No, it's a good one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Record low unemployment rates due to vocational education opportunities.
So
Something like that.
Record low unemployment.
due to
Due to the educational opportunities.
and jobs, right? Career technical jobs, did you say available? Yeah.
Anything else? Oh, okay.
Keeping up the tradition of excellence.
Yeah. Keeping up the tradition.
Keeping up, which is really going to be hard for him to handle because he struggles a little bit about that keeping things up. Yep. Remember, he's the tradition.
The tradition of excellence. Because it's tradition.
This is a good one. 100% of all students report their needs have been met. Their academic needs are just all their needs. But
hyperventilating.
That's how my kids got here.
Any questions? Because quite frankly, we are wrapped up with this now. Any questions of us, me, relative to this process, not only tonight, but what we've been doing? We have, as Lane has already alluded to, we've done, many of these listening sessions, and we'll continue to do them. And through the district, as many places that they want us to do them, we will. Because one of the things we have found through the process, folks, quite honestly, in all seriousness, reason we think, and we promoted this type of thing for as long as we have, is that community members / parents see the school district through a certain lens. You can go into the staff room, or you can meet with staff like I did today, and went through, not a listening session because they've already done this, but they see things through a certain lens. Then you can talk to board members. And this is no disrespect to any particular group, but then they see it through a certain lens. And so the bottom line to this, and then I alluded to the students, the bottom line is taking all this data and now starting to correlate it and see where does it match up. Where do people, quite frankly, and there will be, you mentioned space, well I can tell you for sure that your staff mentioned space. And I can tell you for sure that we got that even out of students, even though they were at the high school. So you start to see some things that correlate themselves together, and that's what becomes beneficial to your decision makers. Because as they look at this big pie, now they got to decide, where do we go? Well, if all these groups, or a large percentage of these groups, are seeing things the same way, then maybe this is a good path and this makes sense for us to go down. So that's why we really encourage these listening sessions and getting data, and even though there's only a dozen of you here, so to speak, it's still valuable stuff that comes off. Questions? Greg, yeah.
Kind of sit there, kind of working on this. There's 4 parents. There's 300 kids in this school. Why doesn't anybody care? How can we make them care?
You know what, and I shared this with Molly, as well as Lane herself. I mean, I've been in education for 30-some years, and I've gone through many of these as a soup, as a principal, and so forth and so on. Obviously, there's needs in the building, but generally speaking, unless there's controversy in the building, sometimes you don't get turnouts, quite honestly. This is not indicative of people not caring. It's indicative of maybe people are somewhat satisfied with things and how they're going. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't think there needs to be space. But it's not, when we do community sessions, and I mean this not tongue-in-cheek, but it's always a crapshoot as to how many people are going to show up. It could be the weather, it could be activities, it could be couldn't find a babysitter, it could be I'm not that unhappy with the things that are going on, the staff is doing a great job, and so on. So it really has a lot to do with sometimes perception as opposed to do I really care. Now that being said, I know these folks have reached out, and yes, you're hoping they're going to come, and you're hoping they'll be engaged in it, and maybe as this path goes farther down the path, I should say, it's this plan, maybe the engagement will become more real to people, and then you'll start to see that. But you're right, I mean, it's frustrating, and thank God you folks came.
Nobody's going to want to pay the taxes if they don't care.
Well, and there's a lot more to go on than just this. I mean, these folks, and you saw the presentation, there's so many more steps that are still going to be engaged in the communication piece, other than just obviously what we did tonight, or what was done tonight by the district and so forth. So you got a valid point, and it is frustrating, but at the same time, thank God you guys showed up, because you might have been our all-time lowest group. We had 6 one time, so we were hoping that we'd get over 6, and when you came in, we saw we had 10, we were in good shape. Go ahead.
Well, this is your 3rd session, and I'm curious about the makeup of all of the sessions. Some of us are retired educators, some of us are current educators. Who else is coming to the sessions?
I didn't do the first 2, but I have more later.
The first session was exactly this size. There were about 12 public people that came, plus a lot of school personnel. And that was at Riverside. And it was a makeup very similar to this. Some parents, some retired. It was a nice makeup. At Harrison, there were 61 people there there that were not involved in the school, you know, as an employee. So yeah, there was a nice turnout at Harrison. A lot of parents, many people that didn't have children anymore in the school too. So there's a lot of heart and soul, you know, there too about what could happen to their school, and so they really wanted to make sure that they had a chance to voice that. And I felt that it was really a great meeting. Did you?
It went well.
Yeah, it went super well. So yeah, but you're right. We need to get more. Another thing too, like now in the summer when there isn't so many school activities and some of those kinds of things, that's a great time to do some of those coffees or whatever. And so even if somebody wants to host like a coffee party or something, I would love to come and just meet some of the people in your areas or sit out on the deck, or, you know, it doesn't have to always be like this where it's real structured. We can just talk as well. So, yeah.
Greg, your point though is a dramatic change in school dynamics. Folks don't come to the school to get information. It doesn't really matter if it's a community, they don't come at all to school to get information. We have to go to where people are to give information. So your frustration is not a Nisswa or a Brainerd school frustration. It's really a dynamic across education. Just the work environment, the number of people working, it's difficult for folks to carve out this time. So I understand your frustration.
Are there any other questions? You've been so gracious, you've sat down for an hour and a half and gorgeous night. But any other questions that for us, I guess, or for Elaine or school board members that are here? Anything?
I just want to say thank you.
Thanks for coming. We will pull off the post-it notes about Hollywood. We're going to pull those off, so that will not go into the paper. So, but anyway, I'm sorry.
The one thing we use about this on both my kids, but it really is really true. So it's heard that in the answers about how important the community is. So I think what you guys are getting on board. I do too.
Yeah, but this one's not going to pass this thing by themselves.
But I know there was some concerns about after high school. But I think
There's plenty of cookies, so if you need to bring treats home to the kids or whatever, grab them. Otherwise,